The most recent 2 episodes of the Ahsoka series exemplify why Dave Filoni is giving Star Wars fans everything we've wanted to see since Disney acquired the property, and in my opinion, Part 6 is the best of the entire season so far. A new galaxy, exploring different parts of the Force, Grand Admiral Thrawn. There is so much to love, and as a fandom, we should rejoice. I know some fans will disagree with this, but with 2 to go, they've set up the climax in a very clever way. What has gotten everyone talking is that after 5 long years, we finally know where Ezra and Thrawn wound up. We get our first look at these ancient Nightsister mothers, who are appropriately very creepy. And as always, my dear Mandalorians, there is a ton to break down. I'm gonna go through various important parts of the episode, so let's begin. One aspect of this episode I've not seen too many people mention just yet is the poetry and connecting themes between the words and actions of various characters, sometimes ones which aren't even linked. For example, the episode starts with Huyang talking about the history of the galaxy and offering to tell Ahsoka stories of old that he used to tell at the temple for generations. And then later in the episode, Baylan, when telling Shin about his real plans in Peridea, the Great Reset, a greater power, he once again brings up the ancient story that he heard as a youngling at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant about the pathway to Peridea. Is it possible Huyang told him that story? And is it possible this same story is the one that Huyang was about to tell Ahsoka? Of course, they've left this open-ended, and we're still left wondering what Baylan's true motive is. Let's start with this. He talks about ending a terrible cycle, and how his own survival of Order 66 was a wake-up call. Given the connections that Baylan and Shin's last names have to wolves of Nordic mythology who devour the sun and moon at the end of the world, I'm wondering if Baylan literally is trying to reset time, or cause a cataclysmic event. What is calling to Baylan? What is the greater power? Because Shin asks him, will the alliance with Thrawn give us the power we want? But that power is fleeting. Baylan says he seeks the beginning. Is it the Grisk? Some iteration of the Yuuzhan Vong? Maybe a Force entity on Peridea that we've not seen before? Abeloth? Another Force deity? One theory that my good buddy Star Wars Santa suggested is that Baylan's plan might be similar to a scrapped plot point from what would have been George Lucas's sequel trilogy. This involved Luke Skywalker talking directly to the Whills about fate, the universe, and the cyclical nature of time. If George had not sold Lucasfilm to Disney, this is something you wanted to explore in depth. The Whills, they were a community of spiritual beings who essentially were telling the story of Star Wars in the Journal of the Whills. They were a higher order of beings deeply connected to the Force. Baylan tells Shin that she was not trained to be a Jedi but something more, and he's hoping the Nightsisters are going to help him, and Peridea, presumably being a planet so attuned to the Force, could facilitate such contact. Morgan Elsbeth, earlier in the episode, literally mentions the days before time was counted, and the ancient Nightsisters were amongst the first known Force-sensitive beings. They have unimaginable powers that Thrawn is using and is gonna use for his plan. Is Baylan trying to get a slice of it for his own purposes? I love that this episode has left us with so many questions. Now, on the subject of Peridea itself, we now know it's not the name of the second galaxy, but just one planet within it. We also learn that the Nightsisters originate here, and they were one of the first to ride the Purgle. The Purgle graveyard was horrifying. And now I'm wondering if it's a possibility that several races and species of Force sensitives, so not just these Nightsisters, originate in different planets across Peridea. Maybe the Yoda species, some sort of ancient Sith. The arrival on this world was eerie, mysterious. The Kainas did a fantastic job yet again with the music. I love the addition of the tall, thin statues. And I do just want to posit, this is not the first time we've seen Nightsisters in live action. In the made-for-TV Ewok movies, we saw the OG, but this iteration is new, similar in design to the Dathomirian ones from the animated series, but they were so unique in their own way too. Some have pointed out the physical similarities to a more sinister version of the Mortis gods in their design. And speaking of design, the costuming, creature designs, and world building was some of my favourite in recent Star Wars memory. Thrawn's army of the undead, the Stormtroopers which were terrifying, the ones which are probably clones revived using Nightsister magic, the same way they used Marok, and I'm wondering, could we eventually see Mount Tantiss in live action when Thrawn returns to the known galaxy? Is he going to use it as a cloning facility or a storehouse as we see in the expanded universe? Then there was the turtle-like Noti species, which fell right out of George Lucas's imagination, definitely something he would do. They were funny, and as I say, I love the world building. The bandits were extremely reminiscent of samurai, and then there was Howler the wolf, whose design was a mixture of the death dog from Willow, another Lucasfilm property, and Sabine Wren riding it was a reference to Princess Mononoke. And so now, my dear friends, we need to talk about the Grand Admiral himself, Thrawn. The most epic and breathtaking moment of this entire episode was seeing the scale of the Chimera come into frame, and then the introduction of Lars as the iconic character, the army of the undead chanting his name. Now, in terms of the way he looks, that is something which Star Wars fans are going to debate, and I've already seen a lot of criticism, but I was actually pleasantly surprised compared to the couple of frames we saw in the trailer. Remember, at this stage Thrawn is older, but Lars Mikkelsen seems to have the definitive attributes, cadence-wise, and of course his voice, to play this character as well as he does. And he was so true to his expanded universe depiction too, obsessed with learning his opponent's culture and background, getting inside their head, understanding what makes them tick, and how to play on their weaknesses. It's just like the quote from Sun Tzu, "To know your enemy, you must first become your enemy." We saw this often in Star Wars Rebels, and now at the end of this episode, when the Grand Admiral is surprised that Ahsoka Tano might still be alive. He says he wants to know who her master was, and pretty much everything he needs to about her before she arrives. Now, fans of the canon Timothy Zahn Thrawn books would be screaming at this, because Thrawn knew who Anakin was and had a great deal of respect for him. They formed a temporary alliance during the Clone Wars, and we know this through the book Thrawn Alliances. But he clearly doesn't know that Ahsoka was his Padawan, so this will create a fascinating dynamic. He might even offer Ahsoka to work for him, not that she would. And seeing that sense of panic in his voice and his menacing red eyes really tells you that he recognizes Ahsoka is a worthy adversary and a real threat. And keep in mind, this is now the third time our villains have tried to kill her, and she's gotten away. In The Mandalorian Season 2, Chapter 13, Morgan Elsbeth lost the jewel on Corvus to Ahsoka, and in Part 4 of this series, Baylan was unsuccessful in killing her on Cetos. And that's another point. Thrawn does not think much of Baylan or Shin. He didn't expect them on Peridea. He sees them as mercenaries who are disposable. Separate factions within our villains, different motives, different goals, many of which are unclear so far, but with 2 episodes to go, we're gonna get answers. Baylan and Shin once again proving they are the most captivating characters of this show. And so now, my dear friends, we have to talk about that great reunion. Sabine, at last, finds Ezra. Her heart can rest. She looks so happy, the same way Ahsoka was when she saw Anakin. She's been dreaming about Ezra for all these years, and finally, he was in front of her. This was such an emotional scene, I didn't expect it. He's been living out with the Noti. Seriously guys, this show is a Star Wars Rebels fan dream. I wish I could just go up to Dave Filoni and thank him for this. Iman Esfandi was fantastic, he embodies the role so well, he's got the mannerisms down, and even the voice. He has a lot of questions for Sabine, and now she is worried and uncomfortable because they think they might be stranded there, and on top of this, she's gonna have to tell him the truth about how she got there, and how in her mind, she betrayed and abandoned Ahsoka, and she thinks that she's dead. Again, a lot of riveting conversations that are to come in the next couple of episodes. So now our heroes are in a very interesting place. Ahsoka Tano has not yet arrived, Thrawn is up to something which is going to be of a scale we can't imagine, and the director Jennifer Getzinger gave us a 10 out of 10. An amazing episode, I love this one. But what did you guys think? Share your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, my dear friends, I will be making videos in the week explaining various scenes, but those are my initial thoughts and my review. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you next time. May the Force be with you, always.